Back when my friends and I had more time, we would often make playlists for each other, showcasing the best songs that we had listened to over the past couple of months. And for the most part, we listened to music that you'd probably find on the radio to an extent, real music. But one of my friends, Jorge, who you might know from making my thumbnails, listened to mostly video game music. And one of the things that he often put on his playlists were Persona music. Now, we would rate each other's playlists based on a score from 1 to 10. And as you can see, throughout most of the playlists, a lot of our playlists got pretty good scores. Don't look at mine. But for Jorge, it seemed like a consistent issue. He constantly was getting the second lowest or the lowest score out of everybody in the group. And I was wondering why. And only to add to the confusion, I recently played through Persona 3 Reload for the first time. Great game, by the way. And I noticed that I liked a lot of the songs in the game. And then I realized they were on Jorge's playlists, and I had rated them lowly. Why was that? And then I realized, Persona's music has a bit of a problem. Hey, just coming in real quick to interrupt your video, just saying that Persona 5 and Persona 3 story will be spoiled in this video, so if you don't want spoilers for that, you can click off now, go play the games, they're really good. Okay, back to the video! Okay, so I won't beat around the bush on the problem. I think the problem is that Persona's music is so integral to the experience of Persona's games. And what do I mean by that? Well, the best way to explain it would be actually to look into the lyrics of some of the songs in Persona's games. So, let's just do that. Please ignore my bad Persona 3 dancing and moonlight footage for this section. Thank you. Okay, so let's start with Burn My Dread, because I think this is a perfect example of what I am talking about. It's kind of the quintessential Persona 3 song. It used to be the opening track to the game, and that's something that I correctly predicted in my original diabolical 5 out of 10 rating for this song. I can use a couple lyrics from this song, but I'll decide to use these from verse 3, which says, "Clockwork maze, end unknown, in frozen time a staircase stands, shadows crawl on blood-stained floor, I rush ahead with a sword in hand." Now, if you played Persona 3, you know that this is perfectly describing Tartarus, but imagine if you hadn't played Persona 3. What the frick does that even mean? I can kind of see why I gave this song originally a 5 out of 10. Now, I'll give credit to the chorus. I think it is, for the most part, pretty thematically relevant, regardless if you played the game or not, but most of the lyrics just kind of reference Tartarus. And if you haven't played Persona 3, then, what are you getting out of those lyrics? And this is not just a Persona 3 issue, it also happens in Persona 5, in songs such as Rivers in the Desert. In Rivers in the Desert, it talks about the Phantom Thieves' mindset towards the end of the game, which makes sense because it's an end-game boss theme. It talks about them wanting to create new life, have a new start, and using the metaphor of creating rivers in the desert to really show how hard of a task it's going to be for them to do that. But if you haven't played Persona 5, how much did the lyrics really mean to you? If you played the game, you know that Rivers in the Desert is a perfect metaphor because of how hard the Phantom Thieves had to work to create that new life they wanted the entire game. But if you haven't played Persona 5, you might be able to recognize that the lyrics are good, but they might not really mean that much to you. So why did I analyze all of those lyrics? Well, it was to show you that while the songs are great within the realm of the Persona universe, if you don't have any context for the lyrics, they might not really mean that much to you. And I think that's the problem that my friends and I ran into when we were listening to Jorge's playlist. We could recognize that the lyrics were probably good and that the backing tracks were most of the time also pretty good, but we could not understand the lyrics to their full extent, leaving the song feeling kind of hollow in the end. But now, let's move on to the next line of thinking. Is this actually really a problem? And the answer is, well, I don't really think so. When I was pitching this idea to my friends, one of my friends smartly mentioned that, hey, when the frick are you going to listen to Persona music outside of Persona? And that doesn't just go for Persona, that goes for anything that might have music in it in general, such as other video games or movies. You're unlikely to just go and randomly turn on the Top Gun Maverick soundtrack unless you actually have watched Top Gun Maverick. There's a key difference in regular music and music that's made for something like a video game or a movie. regular music is meant to, in general, be relatable to anybody who listens to it. Whereas where we're talking about video game and movie music, it's meant to complement or give more context to what's going on screen at the time. And that doesn't just go for songs with lyrics, that goes for instrumentals too. I mean, the Tartarus themes are amazing, but if you don't have an idea of what Tartarus looks like when those songs are playing, then are they really that good? That's why context matters. That doesn't mean that songs from media can't become huge hits even outside of its kind of original context. It just is a lot harder. It's happened before. Persona 5, I would argue, kind of had this happen because that game was just so culturally relevant, plus it was in Super Smash Bros., so that helped it. And also, it's happened with other video games, such as Super Mario Bros.' main theme. But even Koji Kondo said that he changed the song during development because he felt like the original theme that he came up with didn't necessarily fit the game. But to become a huge radio hit is not the goal of these songs. They're just meant to complement what's happening on the screen. Now, there are some cases, such as Post Malone's Sunflower with Into the Spider-Verse, where it became a huge over billion plays hit, but to be honest, at least for me, I think of that as a Post Malone song, not as an Into the Spider-Verse song. Whereas stuff like Mass Destruction or Beneath the Mask, I think of those as purely Persona songs because they're so integral to the experience and what's going on in the game at the time that they play. There's not necessarily a better or worse way to make your soundtrack. At least in my opinion, I prefer stuff like the Persona soundtrack that feels a little bit more tailor-made for what you're experiencing versus something like the Spider-Verse soundtrack for the most part, which is songs that are made by a bunch of great artists that have a lot of talent, but just don't feel as tailor-made for whatever you're watching or playing. But again, that's my opinion. And I've had enough of sharing my opinion, so I'm going to end the video here. Thank you so much for watching. I know this wasn't necessarily a problem per se, but I thought it was an interesting topic to talk about, and I want to upload on my channel more, so I figured I would just make it into a short little video. I promise I'm not becoming a Persona channel, even though that's all I've uploaded the last 3 videos. I hope to find more topics or games that are interesting to talk about in the near future and upload here more. So if you want to be along for the ride, consider subscribing so it can be in your sub feed whenever I decide to upload again. But if you don't, hey, thanks for stopping by and I hope you have a great day. And hey, to everybody, I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, night, wherever you are, and this is Crystalized, signing out.